What am I doing? I'm talking to an empty telephone.
I don't understand.
Because there was a dead man on the other end of this fucking line.
Driving movies. Now playing Two Lane Blacktop, Baby Driver, Collateral. Max, 6 billion people on the planet. You're getting bent out of shape because of one fat guy. I'm Liam Waite. Welcome to Corona Cinema. And I'm joined, as always, by May,
Good afternoon.
Ross,
Good evening.
and Mason.
Hi, you alright?
And we're going to start with Two Lane Blacktop from 1971. Two men drag racing across the US in a 55 Chevy. Dennis Wilson's the mechanic, James Taylor's the driver. Directed by Monty Hellman and written by Rudy Verlitzer and Will Corey. Starring James Taylor, Warren Oates, Dennis Wilson, and Laurie Bird. Mason, you managed to find this film despite it not be available to stream in the UK. How was your experience watching it?
The experience trying to watch it was pretty much impossible, considering it's on like no streaming service here. And yeah, it was just a bit of a ball ache, to be honest. But when I actually finally found a way to watch the film, I really enjoyed it. I think there's kind of like this simplicity to the film that I just find really effective. Like they don't try and push too much storyline. There's not really much going on in this film, and yet for like 2 hours, I was still interested. And it's such like an easy watch for me. I think the best character in the film is it GTO, his name? Don't know. Like the older guy in the race. I think he's really fascinating, the way that he just like picks up all these random people and he just tells a complete different lie each time. But it's so believable. And it took me a while to even catch on, to be honest. Like after the second time, I was like, shame, this guy's life is so interesting. And I was like, wait, no, he's just changed shit every single time. But what I find really effective about this film is how it kind of highlights that culture in America at the time. It's that idea of like freedom and just being able to like have some shit car and just be like, yeah, cool, I'm just gonna go all the way across America. Which back then I feel like in America, going across one side to the other is pretty much like going from one side of the world to the next. I really like the girl character, and I kind of like how no one has a name in this as well, because like having like the girl just being called the girl, it's like I think that's really effective in kind of just highlighting that the actual person isn't important. I feel like it's more so the message or what they are trying to represent, which is more important. So not giving them a name is effective. Like the girl, she just really represents just this kind of free spirit. And she's more than happy just to hop in and out of every single car. And this is the way that if someone better comes along, she just literally hops on the back of their motorbike and just drives off. They kind of introduced this like love triangle, love square kind of thing. And it's a bit strange. I don't really know how to take it. Like at first I thought they were trying to play the old guy by like using her as bait or something, like to slow him down. I wasn't really sure like where they were trying to go with that. And I still don't really know, to be honest. But yeah, besides that random like love triangle, I think I really just enjoyed kind of like the vibe of the film. Like I don't really care about cars or anything like that, or like car racing. But the racing scenes in this film, they are effective. Like I feel like they do build up that excitement. And although the actors don't really show much emotion, I don't really think it's a particularly good, like a well acted film. I think like the simplicity in the acting as well it's just kind of effective because it feels a lot more natural, and it feels, I don't know, it feels like it's delivered. It's kind of delivered in a nicer way for what the film is. And yeah, I mean, when it finished, I was like, out of all the three of the films this week, like this one was like, this really does make me want to go on some kind of like road trip across America with just like this, I don't know, like even just the like the gas stations just just seem interesting enough. And this film kind of, for me, just kind of like encapsulates all of these simplistic things about that time, but makes them interesting to me as a viewer.
I feel like with this film, like, I need to be able to watch it again under more legal, uncorrupted circumstances, because that kind of just like clouded the whole experience watching it, getting an hour in and then the one illegal stream breaking down, and then couldn't find another one last night. I didn't find one until like 2 hours ago, and then watching the rest of it, like just kind of just breaking up like that, it's kind of it's going to distort my whole opinion of the film. I kind of like, yeah, That's like a caveat to everything I'm going to say about it. But I did like how it's just really weird opening. Cause I don't really get it. This is I think it has like a reasonable reputation. Like it's a bit of a cult classic kind of thing. And it's in, I can't remember what they call it. Like in America, like the kind of like heritage of films in America. It's in that like Hall of Fame. Like I can't remember what it's called, but like that kind of thing. It's a historical film. So I didn't really know anything about it. So the opening is kind of like eerie. Like there's no score, there's no real like discernible like dialogue or anything. Like no, you can't make up what's going on by what they're saying. There's no like context. It's kind of cars driving around. I always like in films where they like put the camera in the back seat, so you're kind of like with them on this journey. I think that's just like an easy way to like promote like a good vibe whenever they do that in films. And yeah, this is kind of like subdued. Like you said, there's not much score. The characters are like pretty inert. They don't really. Like GTO is the only one who has like expression. Really, like he gets like excited like a few times. I think, and it's kind of like abstract. It's not really about like you say. It's not really about the plot. It's one of those movies that is about the vibe, and I connect with those movies quite a lot. That's kind of like one of my like things. Like I watched Easy Rider, which came like a couple years before this, for the first time a few weeks ago, and that like really like vibed with that. I think that was like more kind of visually like interesting. I thought there was more like cool stuff on screen in that one, and like more like memorable conversations. Plus, you had Jack Nicholson. That was like his first like breakout performance in that one. Whereas here, like there wasn't enough to like latch onto for me. Again, I need to rewatch it like properly and actually have it like I can watch the whole thing through without having MILFs in my local area, like Ross said, popping up and distracting you, whatever. But yeah, this didn't connect to the vibe of the film as much as I wanted to. When there's other films, it was in a similar way, like road movies like this, where I have enjoyed it a bit more. Ross, you didn't find a new stream after making it through that first one, which got you through to an hour. But what did you make of that hour? If you got offered the chance to watch the rest of it, would you take that based on what you saw in that opening hour?
I think it's just because I watched it last night and it was like 2 a.m. when the stream crashed. Well, it didn't crash. It's just the link that I think we all use that crashed. Yeah, thanks, Mason. And yeah, I just got distracted by the local MILFs, I guess, as well. But no, from what I did see, it was good. Like you can see why this is like a cult classic, and I think with these like low budget like 60s, 70s, 80s films, they've got like a certain like vibe and feel that you can't like recreate with nowadays kind of cameras and technology and stuff, and that kind of like gritty kind of like the way it's filmed, the kind of shit audio and stuff. You can't recreate that, but it's like a vibe that I like with these. And yeah, that hour I did see, I felt really like relaxed watching it. And it was kind of, I was just kind of content with just kind of watching it and just going along with. I didn't care what happened. That they were on this race to Washington DC, and from the start, I didn't care who won. I was just kind of enjoying being in their presence, and I think I would at some point. I'll finish it, but from what I saw, I liked it. But yeah, it's just because it was like 2 a.m. I was like, okay, it's crashed. I'm ready for bed now. That was what happened.
I think another thing about like how quiet the film is and how there's not a lot of like big action. See, even the driving is quite like low tempo. It's not like high octane, Fast and Furious stuff. Kind of all subdued the whole way through. I think that kind of like it creates like that mood of like loneliness. I thought for like these guys just traveling across country, not really having any like personal conversations with each other, just kind of going from place to place, doing their races. No real relationships there, despite always being with each other. So I thought that kind of mood came across, but overall I just didn't really have that much interest in them or what they were like kind of like aspiring towards, just because there wasn't that personality. Matty, did you have any issues connected with these characters? They're not saying an awful lot throughout the film. It's more of just being in their presence, seeing where they're going. So do you find it a bit hard to kind of get on their vibe?
Yeah, I think I definitely found there's a kind of a lack of back and forward between the characters, which kind of like the lack of dialogue means you can't really relate to the characters because you don't really know what they're inspired about. Because I mean, they obviously like cars and they like the idea and the romanticism of being able to travel freely and kind of like what Mason was saying, like make these journeys and the freedom that they have to explore on their own, especially when they're young and they get to like the fluidity of the lifestyle they choose and kind of the bare bones of they only need everything they need is in the back of their car kind of thing. So that definitely is nice. But and I get what Ross is saying about how it's like a slow and relaxing start to a film, well, the whole film relatively. But I did just feel, for me, it was just kind of empty and like the lack of names for characters. I really struggled to explain the plot with this film because I can't really explain who's who. And yeah, the two characters, the two guys in the car with the girl, they kind of just acted the same. They didn't really seem to be different between them. And there just wasn't much personality, especially compared to some of the other films that we're looking at this week in terms of like what's put across through dialogue, through acting, through expression, emotion, like things that these people would be passionate about. I just felt it wasn't really captured very well in this film. Granted, I probably lost a lot of it in watching it too late, and then the stream being interrupted and finding a different place and not being too focused on the film. But I think just for me, it kind of felt a little bit empty and a little bit unappealing, which is a shame because I think like at the time that these films would have come out, they would have been like some of the best films to watch because of the approach they take, and especially on such like a low budget film as well, it's done really, really well. So it shouldn't really be held to like comparison against other films from today. But for me, I wouldn't choose to watch a film like this again. Maybe to like give it a fair chance, I would, and sit down and just only watch the film uninterrupted and not be distracted, and then I can really make a good judgment on it. But just from the outset, from what I've seen, it didn't really speak to me that much as a film.
I do like from what like I spoke about Easy Rider. That was, from what I read, that was like the start of like the kind of countercultural movement in terms of obviously the 70s. That was like a big thing in like America, like the response to like the way politicians were acting and like the Vietnam War. That's where you get like the hippie movement of that kind of stuff, and how movies fit into that with like these kind of like unstructured films where it's just like you're just driving, it's just a vibe. We're not going to conform to any conventional like movie structures. We're going to do our own thing in that kind of way. So I find that interesting. I'll be like interested to like delve more into like that era of filmmaking from like a history perspective. So yeah, I like there's enough there to like to be like interested in and to want to watch it again. Like I say, like in a proper way, to try and appreciate it, because it's got like that is well reviewed. It's got a good reputation. So yeah, it's kind of a weird and unenviable viewing experience this week. I also do like the cars, the way the bonnet opens on the cars. Like I said before the podcast, that looks cool. Like, have you seen that before? Anyone? Like, I've never seen that before. It looks pretty cool. Was that like a thing? Those kind of cars. If I just go outside now to the Vauxhall Astra, like can I just do that? Like it's like a setting. No? Okay, let's get some ratings. Start with Mason.
I'm going to try and rate it on if I just watched it clearly the whole way through with no interruptions. So I gave it an 8.
Ross?
I feel a bit of a cheat giving this a rating because I can't really be sure, but I'll rate on what I saw, and yeah, I'll give it a 7.5.
Natty?
I have to be honest to myself, and I feel like watching this film, even if I watched it again, I feel just the slowness and the lack of dialogue and the lack of this film posting itself for being about racing, not racing, but like kind of like almost drag racing, and then even that part of the film doesn't quite hold up. I'd have to give it a 6.8, and that's for me, that's kind of generous. I wanted to give it a 5, but I'll give it a 6.8.
No, I like that. I like that they promoted it as drag racing. That's like another way to like subvert people's expectations. Like, yeah, we're gonna promote it as a drag racing film, and they just do like this is gonna be like hardly any kind of action. This is gonna be sitting there for an hour and a half. I respect that, but yeah, I feel like annoyed trying to rate this. I'm gonna as a placeholder before I can watch it again. I'm gonna give it like a 7.2. Okay, moving on to Baby Driver. What a big difference. 2017. After being coerced into working for a crime boss, a young getaway driver finds himself taking part in a heist doomed to fail. Written and directed by Edgar Wright, starring Ansel Elgort, John Hamm, Jamie Foxx, Eliza Gonzalez, Lily James, and Kevin Spacey. Oscar nominated for Best Film Editing, Sound Mixing, and Sound Editing. I think this was Ross. Yeah, he picked this, so he's going to talk about it.
So I love Edgar Wright. I think he's one of the most like creative directors out there, and straight off you notice this is his style, this is his film. With that like editing, directing, and camera work, it's the same kind of thing you obviously get in like Scott Pilgrim and the Cornetto films. It's straight. He's the first scene where Baby's just waiting outside singing along, and then him driving back. It's just the awesome like editing and stunt driving in the car and stuff. Straight off, you got a scene that slaps, and that always helps in any film. And yeah, obviously in this film, I think the main kind of piece of this film is the soundtrack, which is amazing. And it's the main like aspect of the film, and helps the film kind of keep its pace throughout. And also, it really helps that you're always listening to whatever Baby's listening to. And I think that that really helps because you're following him on a more intimate level throughout the whole film. As I say, this film is so fast paced, and it's probably one of like the fastest paced like films out there. It just never kind of stops, never a dull moment. And like when you want a fast paced action thriller, like this is it, and that's the kind of pace you want. You look away from the screen in 1 minute and you'll miss something, and then it's got like the kind of quick snappy dialogue to go along with it, and quite a few like funnier moments as well. I think with the characters, the acting and stuff, it's very like dramatic and exaggerated, but it's obviously meant to be like that, and that's like a directorial choice. And I think it comes across quite well in this film because it goes with the fast pace. Especially like Kevin Spacey on screen. I think he's really good in this film. He kind of steals the attention whenever he's on the screen. And Jamie Foxx as well. Like he's an absolute scene stealer in this. And yeah, I think Ansel Elgort is really good in this as well. I like his performance. And yeah, I think throughout the film you can obviously tell Baby has like, he's at his roots, he's got a good heart. He's always looking after the people, like his foster dad's trying to do the right thing, but obviously he's unfortunately been caught up in this world, and I think they get that across really well, and get Baby's like emotions across really well without even him having to say much, just kind of by like with the music, it plays how he feels, etc. Yeah, and I think the weakest part of this film is the romance in it, the romantic aspects. Lily James and Uncle Elsnort, they don't have like an amazing amount of film, but it's enough to be like believable, and for you to believe that Baby has this reason to like want to get away and have this kind of motive to get him out of the world of like crime. Yeah, so it's believable enough for that. And the story is quite simplistic as well. It's quite a simple, predictable premise of just like a getaway driver doing his last job, trying to get out of trouble. And I think it works well in this scenario, though. You don't need that kind of heavy storyline to go with because the film's so quick paced and keeps you so interested the whole time. You don't really need like a heavy storyline. And yeah, I think overall with this film, it just Edgar Wright's directing kind of on show. It's you can tell he's thought so hard about every single shot and every single scene. And yeah, he's just absolutely directed the shit out of this film. And yeah, I would say as well, I think it should have ended with Baby on the bridge. I don't think that last like 5-10 minutes with him in the prison and stuff, and getting released and stuff was necessary. I would have taken that out personally, but it's still a good film. I enjoyed it. It's obviously not the most amazing like story and stuff, but it's as I say, Edgar Wright has directed the shit out of the film. It's so fast paced, you can't look away. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I feel like the lesson is just always start your films with a heist. I feel like you can never go wrong. But even if you're not a heist film, just start with a heist to get people in. Even if you're like a melodrama, just put a heist in there. Should have put a heist in Two Lane Blacktop, it would have been Matty's favorite film, because this is just like an unbelievable, like, but Dark Knight, Fish Called Wanda. Anytime you start with a heist, it always delivers. And I think like Matty showed me the opening to this film before I saw it. So that was like when I was first getting into movies in 2017. I think it might have came out towards the start of 2017. So Matty showed me the opening, and you're like, oh, that's pretty. Yeah, I'll definitely watch that at some point. And I think watching it this time, like, that is the high point of the film, the opening, which is can be an issue. I think there's also like a great the sequence of him running on foot away towards the end. There's also like another highlight for me. Everything kind of in the middle, like Ross says, kind of a bit thin, but like overall, you're just looking for some good action sequences, some cool like broadly designed characters, but still like cool characters. Like I like the way that I feel like I could imagine Edgar Wright coming up with Baby. I was like, yeah, he's gonna have earphones in all the time because he's got like an ear condition. He's gonna always have sunglasses on, even when the sunglasses get like taken away from him. He'll always have a backup pair in his pocket. I feel like all those like kind of little details. He was like, I can imagine Edgar Wright thinking about how he's gonna put that in there and like using music to kind of navigate his life. Like when he restarts the song before they do the first heist, no, not the second one with like Jamie Foxx and that. And he's like, wait, I've got to restart the song, and then they go again. Little details like that. Like he always acts like he's in a movie at times. It's a bit kind of Spider-Man 3 vibes with him when he's like dancing in the street. I thought could be a negative, I guess. But yeah, it feels like the way the character acts is like he's in a movie or in like a music video. Although I thought the soundtrack could have been better. Like I thought when you think about it, he's kind of he got some similar traits to Peter Quill in Guardians of the Galaxies, with like that always having an iPod or a Walkman, and he's got a dead mum. And so if you compare those two films and you think this could have been like a Guardian Galaxy style, like iconic soundtrack of the last like 10 years. And I don't think it quite delivered. Like the music's all good. I don't think it quite delivered on that level. Mason, do you think the soundtrack was one of those things where it was still like solid, some good music throughout, but I thought like that could have been like a real strong point in this film?
Yeah, that's the problem. I think like it's like 50-50 with each song that plays in this film. They all work well, but having them like, so I remember them, and I'm never going to go onto Spotify and search for the Baby Driver playlist. Like this is not going to happen. But compared to Guardians of the Galaxy, that's something that Matty smashes out on his iPod all the time. So like there's a reason why. Do you know what I mean? There's a reason why that just hits. There's a reason why that hits more. And I think they could have just chose probably more like widely known songs, but then again with Guardians of the Galaxy, they're like old songs that are bangers, but like a lot of the kids who would have watched Guardians of the Galaxy definitely do not know any of those songs. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just a bit of a hit and miss with some of these songs. They kind of like, they work because the formula's there for them to work in this film, but a lot of them just kind of fade into the background. Like they're not, in Guardians of the Galaxy, I feel like the song is kind of at the forefront of what's actually happening. But for quite a lot of the time in this film, the songs are kind of just, they're kind of there, but I'm not really interested in the song in the end.
One thing that I thought was interesting that I hadn't really thought about before watching it this time, maybe it's like the fourth time I've seen it, maybe, kind of like shifting the villain from Kevin Spacey to John Hamm's character, because like obviously Spacey's the one who's like tormented him his whole life, like forcing him to do these crimes. And even when he promised him he'd let him out once he'd repaid him, but like that was never gonna happen. Like you could like, kind of when you're associated with someone like him, you're never really gonna be able to escape that life. But in spite of that, he's still kind of, by the end, he shows like a bit of a paternal side. Like he sees when Lily James comes into the office at the end when they're trying to get away. He's like, okay, fine, you can take your tapes. And then he's trying to defend him. So I guess like kind of comes natural. Like if you're even though you're tormenting this kid, you've watched him grow up. Like, but when did he steal the car? When he was like 10 or something, maybe even younger. Like, so inevitably you're gonna have like a bit of like a paternal side there, even if you're like evil, just because you actually watched the kid grow up. So I thought that was interesting to like make him like kind of affectionate towards Baby and make John Hamm the villain. May, was that something you thought was an interesting way to take that Kevin Spacey character? Obviously, Kevin Spacey and Ansel Elgort haven't aged well in this film, being Spacey and him are both like sexually harassed people in the past. Spacey was a bit of a nonce. So yeah, not great for the legacy of this film. But in terms of their characters, I think it was interesting what they did with Spacey's character.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed how he made a huge point that he's using ankle foot support throughout the entire film, and then he does like help him out to the point of his own demise, which is a shame, but it's also a really nice ending for his character. Largely, I think the main character, Baby, he worked really well in pretty much every point in the whole film. The only point I felt cheesy wasn't because of him, was more because of the direction, was the actual, like you said, when he was going to get the coffee and he's almost dancing like Peter Parker down the street. I was found a bit London there. Peter Parker down the street, and there it felt a bit almost showy to the point of cringy. It definitely did feel like he knew he was in a film, but I wouldn't say that necessarily took away from the film, because it still kind of laid like the emphasis on the film being musically driven, and I think that is probably the strongest thing about this entire film, is like how embedded the music is into the whole like substructure of every scene, of every action that's happening, to like moving the gear stick into position and closing the doors. Even the doors, just the very first few seconds of the film where they're walking out to the heist, the car doors are closed in beat to the music. Like everything is timed literally perfectly, and it's just really, really, really well sculpted, and you can see how much time and effort has gone into it, and it doesn't really fall short in any part ever. It's almost like if there's a very, very, very good book written on how to write a very, very good film, this film has followed every single rule in that book, if it existed. Like all the characters are almost color coordinated as well, and have their own theme, have their own type of energy rated on like how they're colored as well, which is excellent. Kind of like Jamie Foxx is like red. I assume he's red. I can't quite remember, but it's like red for his aggression. It's just his power, and it just seems really well put together. There's good interactions between all the characters. It's slightly over stylized, which is good, because then you get kind of more bang for your buck and keeps the whole film moving on and on and on. And it kind of makes such powerful characters interact, which makes the ending more of a ticking time bomb or a firework that's going to go off, which is much more fun to watch than something that's a bit too realistic, a bit too boring, like other films you might have seen this week. John Hamm also is excellent in this film. You always like to see more of him, and I haven't really seen too many of his films, and this is probably one of the first films that kind of introduced me to him. So I'm thankful for that. And I also like the end, how Baby doesn't get away with it, and he actually does have to do time. It kind of like shows that films the actions in films do have consequences. I think there's too many films with you get to the end of film and then no one's died, no one has to go to prison, and they get to bring it all back again for a sequel. I like this film because it does get rid of characters, and it does show the consequences that everyone has. Well, the actions everyone carry out have consequences, such with Kevin Spacey dying, and throughout. It just works brilliantly well. And yeah, I don't really have a bad word to say about the film, which is quite interesting. Yeah, I think, very, very, very solid film. And I think when I watched it for the first time, I said, that's the best film I've ever seen, just from the energy and the way it was put together. I mean, I realized I was possibly overreacting a little bit, but it is a stupidly strong film.
Ross touched on it, but the thing that I don't like about this film is Lily James. Like, her whole energy, the first time she came on screen, her whole energy was just quite annoying. I don't know if she pulled off the American accent that well in this film, and she's not helped by like the writing. Like, I don't think the dialogue between them two is. I think that's probably like the weakest part of the film. Although I think like their shit, like everyone said, like their shared like desire to like escape their current lives. They both lost people. They don't really have much to like stick around for, apart from like he's got his foster dad. But like, even then, still, like the idea that she just like come into his life of like crime, no questions asked, and be like, yeah, I'll go with you, fine. Like, I'm sorted. We'll go on the run. Like that kind of in her both in her performance and in the writing, that kind of just felt a bit like false. And then even Elgort, who like now he's the sexual harassing person, like he's probably not going to get much roles in Hollywood anymore. But like, even his performance in this is like, I don't think it's anything special. And I feel like it kind of, the film exists, and the strength of the film is in spite of him rather than because of him. Like I've enjoyed every viewing of the film, but never really because of him. I've never been like, oh yeah, I want to see like his other work. Like I think his like most high profile other than this is The Fault in Our Stars, which has like a quite big reputation. I've never felt like, oh yeah, I want to see what he's like. I want to see where like what his charisma can bring to other roles. So I thought yeah, kind of an interesting thing to not have for the star to not be that amazing. Ross, did you think he was? Have you, when you've watched this film, have you been like, yeah, I want to see what Ansel Elgort's doing next or what he's done in the past?
No, as you say, I think him and Lily James especially, she's not very like great, but Ansel Elgort, he's good enough to carry the role. He's good enough. I think he's good in it because he does get the performance across well, but I don't think as it's much compared to Kevin Spacey, John Hamm, Jamie Foxx. They're all and the John Hamm's girlfriend. They're all a lot better in this film, and I think their kind of characters' charismas and whatnot are what makes this film a lot more interesting. What keeps kind of the fast pace and the like electricity of the film. It's what keeps it going, and what keeps like kind of the quick dialogue they all have, because he doesn't really talk much. So the quick dialogue they all have, it keeps the film flowing. And I think especially Jamie Foxx, kind of he always takes the lead in the conversations and whatnot, and that's why the film's good in that sense. But I think it's obviously he did well with what he had though. Ansel Elgort, it's not a bad performance at all, I don't think. But with what he had, there wasn't much there anyway. I think it's still a good performance nonetheless. Like it's kind of hard to explain. It's a weird performance because he doesn't really say much, but yeah, it's obviously what was meant to happen. But as I say, like I think Kevin Spacey, Jamie Foxx, John Hamm, those three performances especially are the ones that kind of catch the eye the most within this film.
I don't think the final moment with his foster dad that was affecting, like recording the message and leaving it on him, like describing like what he like. I thought that was a good like way to do it, and he's good in that scene. It's also weird that Kevin Spacey's like, yeah, I never worked with the same team twice, but then works with the same team twice. And maybe I'm guessing that rule. No, Matty, no. He doesn't mean literally all new members. He means you can't. He said you can't use any two same members. Baby's meant to be the only exception, but he uses Jamie Foxx twice in two separate things, and John Hamm.
Yeah, but he doesn't use exactly the same team.
Yeah, that's not what he said.
Okay.
Because like he's like Baby's the only exception. So I'm guessing the rule only applies unless they're as famous as John Hamm and Jamie Foxx. I also wonder. I reckon Baby Driver 2 is like the nephew. The nephew grows up and tries to take out Baby. Because that nephew he was on point. How was he? He was 8. He was on point. In the when they go to the bank to survey the scene. So yeah, I'll wait for that sequel. Okay, let's get some ratings. Start with Ross.
I think this is a solid action thriller. It does what it wants to do. I'll give it an 8.2.
Matty.
I don't think you can name a damn thing to change about the film. And I just really, really enjoyed it. So I gave it an 8.7.
Mason.
I think it's a solid film, but it could be developed better in certain areas. But it's still around a good film. So I gave it an 8.
Yeah, I also give it an 8. And the final film is Collateral from 2004. A cab driver finds himself the hostage of an engaging contract killer as he makes his rounds from hit to hit during one night in Los Angeles. Directed by Michael Mann and written by Stuart Beattie, starring Tom Cruise, Jamie Foxx, Jada Pinkett Smith, and Mark Ruffalo. Foxx was nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars, and it was also nominated for Best Editing. Matty, why do you think this film?
I do enjoy this film. I'm not particularly fond of it in terms of films in general, but when it came to driving films, I was a bit stuck. I think it was either between this and maybe Locke. but going back and watching this film again, I do really enjoy it. I think I like how they started off with a nice kind of like dynamic conversation in the taxi. And I kind of like the soft music they played in the background as well. Like kind of like I paused the video to like close my other tabs because I thought I was playing the soft jazz, and then I realized it was the actual film. So that was quite nice. It was just kind of like I felt like I was in like a nice like bar or somewhere, and it kind of lulls you in, and it starts the film off nice and strong. And I kind of like that kind of full circle it does, where you have that conversation with the lady at the start just to get a feel of who Jamie Foxx was and what he was kind of aiming for in life. And then it turns out she is important, and it comes back again, and that's kind of like oh shit, because then it makes her life seem more important. It's not just someone you're just trying to save, just some random, just the next person on Tom Cruise's list. So that was a nice plot twist, and it's kind of like a nice full circle, and kind of made you feel a bit um, more fulfilled towards the end. Tom Cruise as well is probably my favorite part of this whole film because we never really get to see him as a bad guy. Whether he is a bad guy in this is kind of like debatable because he kind of feels like he's not so much. But it's nice because it's not his usual role, and he's kind of strangely like well versed and philosophical for a hitman in this film. And he always seems to ponder what he's doing a bit too much because he always has an argument back for why it's fine, and then always seems to be well suited to analyze everyone else that he comes into contact with, which is quite cool. And yeah, people may see the things he's doing is like ultimately wrong, but he just has a comeback for it straight away. And I liked what he said about how the city was too busy, because he talked about the man who had died on the subway and his body had done a loop for 6 hours before anyone noticed because everyone's so head down and kind of like infatuated with their own lives that they don't notice the people around them. And I think that's just kind of like there's some like tidbits hidden within this film of just little information, or little stories, or little kind of like makes you think quotes about life in general, as well as the things that happen in this film. Jamie Foxx as well. I do like him in this film. I don't know how early on this was for him. This is probably the first film I saw him in. I'm not sure. And I did really enjoy his energy and what he brought to the film. One thing I would say about his acting, though, he kind of seems to almost play himself in every film. He brings the same vibe and the same energy to every film he's in. He'll maybe dial up or dial down whether he's aggressive or whether he's a bit more, what's the word, kind of not withdrawn, but like, or defensive or passive. But it's kind of like, I feel like he never properly delves into becoming a completely different character, and changing his voice and changing his mannerisms and changing everything. I think you saw him partially try to change his mannerisms and his way he acted in Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where he kind of played like an overly bumbly nerd kind of character. It just made me think that maybe he just hasn't been given much scope in the films that he's been accepted onto to fully like change himself into a role. I mean, then the same can be really said for Tom Cruise. He's never really had to pursue any kind of accent work or I mean, he did Valkyrie, which is probably the perfect film to pursue some accent work. But no, he just did his own American accent while playing a German soldier, which is quite interesting. Yeah, as a whole, I really enjoyed the film, and I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there. Sorry.
You should watch Ray, which also came out in 2004. He won Best Actor and got nominated for supporting. Ray is obviously he's playing an actual person. I haven't seen that film. Apparently it's not great, but he's probably one of those where it's like not great film, but it's one of those biopics where it's like really good performance, like he transforms into that person kind of thing. I'll probably watch that at some point. But yeah, this film, I feel like this is the third time I saw it. I only watched it like a few weeks ago, and I feel like I liked it like even more this time than compared to a few weeks ago, which is a bit weird. I think even like Matt said, like the first scene with that song when he's just driving with Jada Pinkett Smith in the back. That's probably my favorite scene in the film, in this like tense action film where you think like it kind of builds to something better, and the better scenes would be the more the ones involving Tom Cruise or something. But that's my favorite scene where they're just vibing Like some nice shots of LA. LA just kind of looks nice in Michael Mann films, like in Heat, which is one of my favorite films, and also the soundbite at the start of this podcast. But just there, the whole vibe of that scene with the shots and like the banter that they have. I have no understanding of these directions and which way is faster or anything, but I still kind of like, yeah, you go to La Brea and then like I kind of vibe with the dialogue that's going on there. And I do like this kind of the disconcerting feeling, like as soon as Vincent gets into his car, and I like watching it this time, like I like how because obviously Tom Cruise kind of knocks on the window, he doesn't get a response, and then he's about to go away, and then Max is like, oh no, yeah, I can take you, and that's kind of like his, obviously he doesn't die by the end, but that's kind of like his like death wish. He could, at that point, Tom Cruise could have just gone, or Vincent could have just gone to someone else, done his own thing, and you would have avoided all this drama. But in that moment, you've decided, okay, no, I want to take you on. And then as soon as he gets into that car, your life's like coming under more and more threat with every minute that goes by, because you can't predict what's going to happen. And that scene, the bit when the body drops onto the taxi, I always forget how it happens, the way it like zooms like so quickly onto the taxi and then the body drops. Like, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird like piece of filmmaking. I always forget that it's coming. So it's kind of like shocking, like, oh, what's going on here? And then boom, body drops. And then that's when, because you're kind of wondering, oh, when I first watched this, what, Tom Cruise is going to be a villain kind of thing in this film? Like, can he pull that off? And in that scene when the body drops and he comes out and he's kind of like surveying what's going on, looking around like, how do I resolve this? And then the whole like the like exchange they have, which is also quite funny, but also menacing at the same time, when he's like, when Max is like, you just take the car, and he's like, oh, you're not going to tell anyone, are you? Oh yeah, cool. And then he's like, no, get in the fucking car. In that scene, that's when I'm convinced from that point, okay, he can be a villain, he can be menacing. I can believe that this isn't a normal Tom Cruise performance. So I thought it ticked all those boxes in that sense. Mason, you said you were a bit disappointed with this one. Where did it fall flat for you?
See, I feel like this film teased me because, like you said, the beginning was so strong. And I loved like this, like the calm vibe from Two Lane Blacktop was just in the first like 10 minutes of this film as they're driving to drop off at work and shit. And I really enjoyed it. It was just, that was so like, effective to me. And then pretty much as soon as we're introduced to Tom Cruise, I just didn't really enjoy the film. I don't really like his acting in this film. And equally, I felt like this film is just, it's not creative like at all. And that, I'm not saying that every film has to be creative and it has to offer something new, but this film tries to just create something very similar to, I feel like, what I could find in many other films, but in a bad way. Like, I don't know, there was something about Tom Cruise's performance I just didn't really enjoy. I think Jamie Foxx is probably the best thing about this film. But even then, like when he's talking to like Vincent's like boss that Vincent has never met or whatever it is, and then he like pretends to be like this hard guy himself. It's just so weird, this like tonal change from this really nervous like cab driver who's also kind of like very chilled. So then he's like, tell that guy with the gun behind me to like fuck off, basically. Like it's just, this tonal change is so weird from him, and like I can't really get on board with that either, that like that's believable that his character would be able to do something like that. And then as well, like the scene in the it's the scene in the club that's just beyond frustrating. These people who are partying in this club, yeah, they see people get stabbed and killed in front of them, and they just kind of shrug it off and like turn around and carry on dancing. Like it's just so mad. There's genuinely no reaction. And then when all like the gunshots start coming, for some reason, for about 7 minutes straight in this film, there's hundreds of people running left to right continuously as they're all trying to like move out of the club and everything. And then I don't know, it's just so weird. And some bits I just find cringy, like when Mark Ruffalo's in the lift. It's just like I feel like the film thought it was being sick when it done that scene. Like, oh my days, they're right next to each other. Like the guy he's trying to hunt is right there. But I was just kind of like, okay. It's like, you're too early to be doing this. Like, it's just, you're not what you think you are. And I feel like this film, I don't know. I just didn't really enjoy it. I watched it today, and I was just kind of like, I can't see myself rewatching it. And I think I do put it down to Tom Cruise's performance and his character. I just find something so strange about it and just so hard to grasp onto.
Not gonna lie, none of that stuff has ever like occurred to me watching these films. Like, I found that funny when he's talking to his boss over the, whatever you call it, what do you call that? Radio? Is it just a radio? Yeah, a radio. Talks to him over the radio. I found that to be funny. The club scene, I thought that was sick. the music that comes on, everything, like the whole aesthetic of that, the way it was shot. I thought it was like none of that stuff like remotely occurred to me, and I liked how it was almost. I find it similar to like Training Day, in a sense of the way Tom Cruise is the Denzel in that scenario, but like the way Tom Cruise has kind of like challenge him. Because obviously Max is, it's so mad when because obviously he talks about wanting to be own the limo company. Like he brings it up, and then like maybe like 10, 15 minutes later, you find out that he's been doing this taxi driving job for 12 years. You think it would be like a few years, like, oh no, it's a temporary thing. I'm just trying to get the money together. It's like, oh no, it's 12 years. So it's kind of, he's stuck in this job that he thinks he's trying to do something else. And he's just trying to insist that it's just temporary, but really he's just going to be like stagnant for the rest of his life. Like, I don't know how old the character is. I think Jamie Foxx is probably like mid to late 30s at this point. Yeah, so, around, right, like 36, 37. Imagine he's around that age. So the idea he's going to like launch into this new career at this point after 12 years being the taxi driver is kind of not unrealistic, but like unlikely. So like he's kind of had to, this night has given him an opportunity to kind of like rise to the challenge set by Vincent in a similar way to like Training Day. You have it's similar as well, because that takes place all in a day. This is all in a night. And you get the scene with Javier Bardem, who pops up, one of his earlier roles, I think in like English language films, when he has to pretend to be Vincent. Obviously they don't know what Vincent looks like, so he has to go in there, try to retrieve the list. And although that's like completely unrealistic, and yeah, I agree with that. It doesn't feel like authentic that he's able to transition in that way. I still like the switch because of how like cool it was. I kind of respect it, the way he's able to adapt and clock on to what the situation. Obviously, it's unrealistic that he knew to say things. What is he like? To have the confidence to be able to be like, yeah, that guy pointing the gun at me, I'm gonna fucking round up his arsehole, whatever he says, and all this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, we need the list. If there was police tailing me, so I had to throw that list away. To be able to say that stuff, there's no way this cab driver, this kind of shy, a bit twitchy cab driver would know to say these things. So yeah, it's not realistic, but I still thought that scene was really cool, and that's kind of a lot to do with Jamie Foxx, probably why he got nominated twice for 2 different films in this year, and for this role, especially for being able to carry off scenes like that. And like other jokes as well. I said that I found the thing over the radio to his boss funny. The other joke is when they go to visit his mum, and she's like, you'd have to hold a gun to his head to make him do anything. that was perfectly. And Tom Cruise kind of slyly looks at him. I thought that was another example where the humor kind of worked for me in this film. Ross, where are you sitting? Did you have any similar feelings to what Mason felt in terms of some of the stuff that movie was a bit far-fetched, a bit hyper stylized?
Yeah, I know exactly what Mason means when he's like that scene you were talking about when he talks to Javier Bardem. He does something that switches up. It's completely unrealistic. When they're in the club, there are this kind of people I like the scene, but it's so unrealistic the way people are just running back and forth for like the whole scene. Like if there's a shootout in the club, everyone would just be out the doors within 9 minutes, pretty much. So that's kind of is where it falls flat. But apart from that, I quite liked it. I personally didn't have a great experience with the film because I think this is I've looked it up, and it's a common issue with a lot of Michael Mann films where it's just kind of like mumble talking the whole film. Like I felt like everyone was whispering the whole film because I was on Sky Go on my Xbox. I couldn't turn subtitles on. So it was really annoying. So I kind of like the bit at the end where he's on the train and before he dies, he says something and it's like, and I had to rewind it like 4 times to be able to understand what he said. So it kind of took that away from me. But it turns out what he did say was quite poetic about being on the subway. I quite like that. But anyway, yeah, so that kind of took away from the experience for me. But nevertheless, like this film is quite unique in the way that like it's got its action bits. It's got its bits in the car. It's like kind of a drama and a thriller at the same time, but split into like it goes from drama to thriller when like I quite like that. And obviously with them in the car, they're kind of talking and throughout the film, throughout the film, they're kind of 2 completely different guys. But throughout the film, they get more and more kind of they realize the similarities as they go along. I think that's quite that was done quite well. And obviously seeing Tom Cruise in the more like within this role than usual is quite nice. And yeah, I as well. what you're talking about, like how Michael Mann makes LA look and stuff. It's because I looked and he buys like low budget HD cameras and just kind of went around and shot LA at night, and it gets that kind of gritty, grainy effect with the film, which works really well, and I really like that. But yeah, I think I like this film, but the kind of some of the scenes, the realism does take away from it, and obviously my personal experience kind of it's very like mumbly when they talk, and I couldn't turn subtitles on, so that was a big issue for me. But yeah, apart from that, it was all right.
Not to intrude on the Heat episode that we're going to do in the final episode of this podcast in 30 years or something, but he was in Heat as well. He filmed like a lot of the stuff in like parts of LA where no one had ever filmed movies before, which also helped with the vibe of that. So I respect his style as a director. And like, yeah, this is not as good as Heat, but it got there enough for me. One bit that I didn't, I still don't, every time I watch it, I don't like is, you know, the bit with the wolves when they appear, and then that kind of like soulful rock song plays. That song just feels like so like out of place. It's really weird. Like feels completely incongruous to the rest of the film. That was when it felt like a completely different film. And then that's just before the club. Then you have the club scene, which I really like, and I like the music in that film. In that scene, then that song, that rock song, comes on again before they do the crash. The crash looks sick as well. But like that song's just really, I don't know why I thought that fit the tone of the film. That was just a bit of a weird one. But the other thing that I really like about this film is how they have Ruffalo like investigate this case extensively, do a fair amount of scenes, to be fair, of him go through all the different details, trying to work out what's the correlation between all these different murders, and then he's just kind of like unceremoniously shot in one instant. It's just like he's tracking him outside, he just gets shot, and that's it. His story's done. And that every time, that's just like, I find that really like bold. It's like, yeah, we're gonna build all this up. You're gonna think you're gonna have like a nice conclusion, then bang, he's dead. That's life in it. He's done out here. Similar to kind of No Country for Old Men, like we talked about, like Matty, before Matty rewatched that film, like he didn't like how Thing was killed off screen, and then it kind of, watching the second time, kind of like fit the vibe of like, oh yeah, it's No Country for Old Men. They're gonna die out here. We're not gonna give you like a glamorous death or anything like that. Kind of, it felt like that a bit in this film. Matty's done something you thought was interesting, to have Ruffalo have a lot of scenes of trying to figure out what's going on, and he just gets shot before he can really resolve anything.
It's definitely a bold choice to do that, and it definitely like adds to the whole like the cold cut, like almost realism of the fact that it's like you're not going to get your arc if he doesn't want you to, and like Tom Cruise being the killer that he is, working his way through people like nobody's business. I think it's nice that it does it on camera as well, and like No Country for Old Men. I think that's the only thing that got me before, and it's just, it just kind of adds to the impact and the severity. Like you can't kind of like chase up on these leads without getting noticed. So I do like that about the film.
Another thing which was like, it makes me laugh, so I'm kind of glad it's there, but it's not very good, is when he gets onto the back of the train, when the train's departed, and he's just like on the he's just like on the back like that. It looks really bad. Like I don't think I'm meant to be laughing at that point. It's meant to be like ominous and like kind of thrilling. He's like, oh my days, they thought they got away, but here he is on the back. But it's kind of like, is he a superhero and he's just there? Like it looks odd. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, like, but May mentioned that quote about that story he tells about the guy on the train and no one noticed him, and then it's poetic that he ends up dying, sat there on the train, probably gonna just go through for a few hours before anyone notices him. So yeah, overall, I like this film. It's an interesting one. I wasn't expecting to have such a polarizing discussion for that. I thought it would be quite like general, kind of like, yeah.
What I would say kind of detracted from this film for me is it starts off kind of deep and kind of like philosophical, and it's like subtle, and then it more or less just weighs up to just a shootout, which kind of makes me feel, I don't know, like it just then turns into just another summer action film, and I feel like it could be more than that. And it does like have its like throwbacks to the start, and then kind of like the meaning to his death. But I feel like it's just a bit, I don't know, it just feels a bit too actiony in places, and I think it could be so much more than just an action film.
Okay, let's get some ratings. Start with Matty.
So yeah, there are several problems that you've highlighted with this film. And when you look at it closely, it does have very strong parts, but I still think in the grand scheme of other films that we've rated, I'd probably give it a 7.4.
Mason.
Oh, I know I slated it, but I'd still give it like a 7. It's entertaining enough to watch. It's not a bad film. It's just, for some reason, this should be my kind of film, but it's just really not.
Ross.
Yeah, I like this film. It's good, but I think, as Matty says, when it kind of boils down to it, it is kind of just feels like a summer action thriller when it could be much more than that. So I think I'll go with 7.1.
I'll go with 7.9. Just below Baby Driver. Okay. Ross will now tell us the average ratings for the films this week and how they fit in to the overall rankings of all of the films that we have done. And because I've dragged this out, he will be ready to be able to speak as soon as I say over to Ross.
So, in last place this week, we have 7.4. In second place this week is 2 Lane Blacktop with a 7.4 also, but it's probably slightly higher. Baby Driver first with an 8.2 overall. So with the overall rankings, that puts Collateral at 85th. On par with Love Actually. It puts 2 Lane Blacktop 83rd. Sandwiched between last week's Tropic Thunder and Steve Zissou. And it puts Baby Driver at 33rd, on par with A Quiet Place. So there we go.
Okay. And now, actor of the week. Start with Mason.
So I've gone for, is it John Hamm? John Hamm. I think he's really good. I like his he's not in this film for that long, but I feel like his chemistry with a character's called Darlin. I think he's I really enjoy what he does.
Ross.
I think I'd go with Jamie Foxx just for the kind of the overall scope between the two performances. They're very they're quite opposite, and I think he pulls them off both quite well. And I think I said earlier in Baby Driver, he does steal the scene whenever he's on the camera. So yeah, I'll go with Jamie Foxx.
Matty.
I kind of want to give it to John Berthnell, but he doesn't really do enough in it. So I think the next one will be John Hamm. And I think he did earn his salt in this film. Yeah, there aren't too many. Yeah, you could kind of give it to Jamie Foxx, I suppose, for Collateral, but I don't think Tom Cruise is too deserving of it. But yeah, John Hamm, just kind of like his role and then his acting just really spoke out among most of them. And it's big people to speak out against as well, like with Kevin Spacey and Jamie Foxx in the same film, to have that kind of like rival. And it's also his mania towards the end. Just kind of works really well without being just kind of silly.
It's a bit mad that there was 2 Johns in that film and both of them spelt John without an H. Like what are the odds? I'm gonna go for Jamie Foxx. I don't really care for his performance in Baby Driver. It's kind of just like there, whatever, but it's more for Collateral. Really good stuff there. Good balance. Okay. The special category which no one has heard. The best drive-in scene across the 3 films. Mason.
I think Baby Driver is probably the best, like my favorite kind of style of driving because it's so high pace. I'm probably going to go for, probably the first scene, to be honest, like the opening scene. I think it's just such a smart way of gripping the audience. And like you said, there's so many films that do it so well, and starting with the highest, but especially when it's this driving scene. Yeah, it's just really good.
Ross.
Yeah, I think I'll go with the first scene in Baby Driver as well. I think Baby Driver does so well overall at just kind of being fast paced and following this car, but also being able to completely tell where it's going and what's happening. I think it does really well at doing that, and the shots are really well thought out, especially in that first scene as well, just as an introduction to the film. So yeah, I'll go with that.
Matty?
Yeah, I think I'm two's gonna have to. I'm two's. I am too. I will also have to go for that first scene in Baby Driver. It's just so strong and it's just so expertly crafted. And I remember they kind of released that scene just as the trailer, and it's like a good 6-minute scene that doesn't give too much away about the film. And it's genuinely like a work of art. I think for there to be like a heist getaway scene for a film, it really, really doesn't get better than that. So yeah, it just takes a top prize, I guess.
Yeah, easy one. That scene slaps. One of the best opening scenes of the last 10, 15 years. The Irish was a Pop Vinyl Award. Ross.
So we know that Bats and Baby already have pops, so we can't go with them. So I think I'd go maybe with Tom Cruise in Collateral. He just it's a very different Tom Cruise look, I think, with the hair and stuff. So maybe we'll just go for that.
Yeah, I've got the Baby Pop Vinyl. I feel like we've done so many Tom Cruise films now. So I feel like I've said him as a Pop Vinyl because I've brought up that he doesn't have a Pop Vinyl for any of his films several times, including the last episode, Tropic Thunder. So was that last episode? Yeah, it was. But yeah, I'm gonna go for Cruise again because what else? Yeah, what else? I'm not gonna say anything for 2 Lane Blacktop. Really, there's nothing. Can't remember. Yeah, no. Maybe if I watched it again, I'd be like, oh yeah, The Mechanic. Get me that. But now Cruise, the Silver Fox, Cruise. At Leon Waite 98. Ross, what's the Instagram called?
Just at Corona Cinema.
At Corona Cinema on Instagram. Ross does some sick stuff there, and we don't pay him anything for it. So just like it. Or whatever. Do you like on it? Yeah, you like on Instagram. You don't do anything, or you share it. You can share on Instagram, can't you? Or I don't know. Yeah. Corona Cinema Podcast.wordpress.com, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean. What's next week? What is it?
On Tomatoes.
Oh, is it? Is that Nick? Oh my days. That's gonna be sick. Oh my days, it's gonna be sick. So we're doing because we're gonna get to 100 films in the next episode. We're doing films that are 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and they are The Terminator, 12 Angry Men, and Citizen Kane Elite episode. Until then, go well.
Cheers, big ears.
Yeah, safe.
Sick. Yeah, next episode's gonna be sick.
Very mad that we're hitting 100 episodes. 100 films.
Do you reckon that'll go to the top 10?
Was so Citizen Kane. I don't know what you're gonna. I feel like Citizen Kane is actually like, even though it sounds like a homework film, because like, oh yeah, it's best film of all time kind of thing. It sounds like a homework film, but it's actually like really entertaining.